This is CNN Breaking News.
Welcome to The Lead. I'm Jake Tapper, and we start, of course, with the breaking news. Former Trump advisor Steve Bannon has been indicted by a grand jury. An arrest warrant, we are told, will soon be signed by a judge. The indictment coming after Bannon refused a subpoena from the House Select Committee investigating the January 6th insurrection. Let's get straight to CNN's Jessica Schneider on the scene outside the courthouse. Jessica, what specifically has Steve Bannon been charged with?
Well, Jake, we now know that Steve Bannon has been charged with 2 counts of contempt of Congress, and the Department of Justice issuing a release saying that those 2 counts stem from his failure to appear for a deposition and also his failure to produce documents for the House Select Committee. Obviously, this has been a several-week-long process. People around Washington, maybe around the country, wondering what the Department of Justice would do. All along, the Attorney General has been saying that they would follow the facts and the law to possibly prosecute this case. I was inside the magistrate judge's courtroom this afternoon when 2 attorneys from the U.S. Attorney's Office here in Washington presented that grand jury indictment to the magistrate judge. The foreperson of the jury was also in the courtroom, and the judge, the magistrate judge here, Merriweather, said that she would also be signing an arrest warrant here. The release from the Department of Justice has said that an arraignment date has not yet been set, but this is significant. We know that the grand jury has at least been meeting for several days, possibly over the past few weeks. And today we saw an FBI agent walk into the grand jury room, presumably to give testimony before the grand jury. And it was shortly thereafter that we saw the prosecutors from the U.S. Attorney's Office walk out of that courtroom and then 2 courtrooms down where they swiftly presented this grand jury indictment to the judge. So while this process may have taken a while from the time that the House referred this criminal contempt charge to the Department of Justice, it was pretty swift this afternoon from the time the grand jury decided to hand this indictment down to the time when it was presented to the magistrate judge, to her signing an arrest warrant, to the department releasing this information. So yes, now Steve Bannon, who was former chief strategist at the White House, indicted on 2 counts of contempt of Congress, 1 for refusing to appear for deposition, 1 for failing to produce documents. And of course, Jake, this will send a warning shot to the president's allies who have so far refused to cooperate or appear, or may in the future refuse. This is a warning shot to them that the Department of Justice will and can move forward and charge people with contempt of Congress here. Jake?
That's right. I mean, we should note that Congress calls people to testify all the time, and, you know, oil magnates and tobacco company executives don't want to do it, but you got to do it. So Merrick Garland, the Attorney General, has been criticized for taking his time with this. Did he have anything to say today?
He did. He actually released quite a lengthy statement courtesy of the Department of Justice. I'll read just a little bit about it because he talks about the fact that throughout this process, they've adhered to the facts and the law. He said, "Since my first day in office, I have promised Justice Department employees that together we would show the American people by word and deed that the department adheres to the rule of law, follows the facts and the law, and pursues equal justice under the law." Presumably, Jake, the Attorney General getting this statement out there right away for any possible criticism or claims that he's playing politics here. Throughout this process, the Attorney General has stressed the facts and the law, leaving it up to his prosecutors, of course, with input from himself as Attorney General. But he has let this process play out despite all of the cries of what's happening. Why isn't the Department of Justice moving fast enough? Today, the Department of Justice acted. The federal grand jury acted, handing down this 2-count indictment. And the Attorney General here sticking by his message that this was all about the rule of law and not politics. Jake?
All right, Jessica Schneider, thanks so much. I want to bring in CNN's Paula Reed, who's here with me in studio, Evan Perez also with us, and also Caroline Polisi, a federal criminal defense attorney, and Philip Bump, national correspondent for the Washington Post, as well as former prosecutor Elie Honig. Paula, let me start with you. Before this happened, the news that we were going to talk about was the fact that former White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows defied the committee today, refused to show up. I think that there are probably going to be a lot of Trump associates who see Steve Bannon arrested, which will happen soon enough, and think, maybe I should cooperate.
Absolutely. It's great news for the committee because we've seen so far they've had difficulty getting meaningful cooperation from the folks in Trump's inner circle who they have subpoenaed. No, I know in talking to sources, there are certainly witnesses who have specifically been watching. What exactly is going to happen to Bannon? Will there be any consequences for completely defying this subpoena? Now, as seen, as you just noted, the former chief of staff, Mark Meadows, he took the Bannon approach too. Instead of saying, look, there are some matters that may be privileged here, he just took a blanket approach and completely defied his subpoena. And the committee has already signaled that it may refer him to for criminal contempt.
Evan, what comes next? So a judge is going to put his or her signature, I guess her signature, on a warrant to arrest him. When would that happen, and what are the stages here?
Look, I think, Jake, we can expect his arrest either today or perhaps they'll ask him to surrender on Monday. But what this indictment does, is this now puts this in the court system and under the control of the courts and the judge, who will take care of this, who will take charge of this case. And so, from the committee's standpoint, this is actually a bit of a problem because it's going to be some time before Steve Bannon, if they can try to get some cooperation if the goal here is to get whatever information they can get from Steve Bannon, it's going to be a while before a judge and perhaps a jury gets to adjudicate all of this. You know, trials here in Washington, they don't happen very quickly. So from that standpoint, it's a bit of I think it's going to be a bit of a frustration for the congressional committee. That said, as Paula pointed out, this is, and Jessica pointed out, this is definitely a shot across the bow for anyone else who wants to defy. And you know, the idea that the Justice Department, for the first time in more than 30 years, is enforcing one of these things and has done the work that they believe shows that they can prove this beyond a reasonable doubt, I think really will weigh on all of those other witnesses. Again, it's going to be a while though before the committee gets what it actually wants here.
And Caroline, so we should obviously remind our viewers that an indictment is not a conviction. But theoretically, if Steve Bannon were to be convicted of 2 counts of contempt of Congress, is there jail time involved? How much? Is there a fine involved? How much?
So each count, Jake, carries with it the possibility of up to 1 year in prison. And yes, there are fines associated with the charge. You know, I would just note, if I were Mark Meadows today, I would be shaking in my boots because he was hoping that this exact situation wouldn't exactly happen. And now it's showing, you know, those that would take the same path not to do so. It's been really a dirty little secret amongst those who represent people in front of these types of committees that really congressional subpoenas don't have very much teeth. You can really, you know, bargain and cooperate with the other side in terms of what you can cover and what issues you don't want to cover. I think this is going to change the legal landscape for congressional inquiries going forward in every sense of the word.
And Philip, do you think the other Trump allies, who as of now had been generally refusing to cooperate with this January 6th committee, do you think this is going to cause them to change their behavior, to try to find some way to cooperate with the committee so they are not held in criminal contempt of Congress?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's really important to remember the very, very wide difference between Mark Meadows and Steve Bannon. Steve Bannon, I think, has very, very few qualms about being seen as a martyr to the cause of Trumpism and going to jail and doing a perp walk in handcuffs and saying, I stood alongside Donald Trump and so on and so forth. I mean, he's already faced charges once in the past 4 years, right? Mark Meadows, I think, is going to have a much harder time convincing himself that that is worth it, right? He to the point that was just made, I think Mark Meadows was very much hoping that this would not be seen as an eventuality. Obviously, the shift in administration, the shift in the Department of Justice means that this same tactic that Donald Trump and his allies used when Trump was president, they knew that the Department of Justice under Donald Trump was not going to prosecute them for contempt. Now everything has changed, and now this is a very real threat as manifested by Steve Bannon. And I just find it hard to believe that there are going to be a lot of people who are going to be as willing potentially as Bannon to do the perp walk and to potentially face these repercussions.
But Elie Honig, let me ask you, Mark Meadows was, at the time of January 6th and the lead up to it, the White House chief of staff, as were a number of individuals that the committee has sought information and testimony from, including Stephen Miller and Kayleigh McEnany and a bunch of others. Their claim to executive privilege, do you think that they potentially have a stronger claim to executive privilege than Steve Bannon, who Trump fired, calling him Sloppy Steve several years ago and was a private citizen at the time? Is there a difference there, do you think, in how much Congress will actually vote to hold a Mark Meadows in contempt of Congress?
Yes, Jake, there's a very important difference there, which is Steve Bannon has the weakest executive privilege claim, which is now a criminal defense. He has the weakest defense of any of these people because, as you said, he was not part of the executive branch at the time. And one thing that's important to note, we're going to have two levels of battle playing out here. First, Steve Bannon's going to try to get this case dismissed. He's going to argue he has a legitimate executive privilege claim. That'll go to the judge. And then he's going to have a trial. We're going to have a jury trial, United States versus Steve Bannon. One thing that's really important to note, if he is convicted, as Caroline said, this is a misdemeanor, which is the less serious type of crime. The maximum sentence is 12 months, 1 year per count. However, this is a really unusual misdemeanor in that there's a mandatory minimum of 1 month in prison. So if Steve Bannon goes all the way through with this, gets convicted, he has to go to jail for at least 1 month.